My hobby is reading about Abrahamic religions and apocryphal texts. I'm trying to get through it chronologically.
So you're Christian?
No, not exactly.
Okay, sure.
I grew up in a Christian tradition. I'm mostly identify as agnostic.
Sure.
Mostly because there's still so much reading to do.
Okay.
If you're read up about it, you know that there's caves and caves of old text around the Middle East.
Sure.
That Sea Scrolls to read.
Yes.
I just read the Apocrypha of Joannes.
Okay.
I'm a bit rough on how to translate it to English, but it's a fascinating text.
Sure.
About meditative states and the concentric circles of angels and heaven and like old, like old deliberations on the structure of heaven and how to even research that.
Sure.
So I found it fascinating. The Quran is, of course, a lot later.
Sure.
So I haven't gotten to it yet.
When you say you're agnostic, you mean you're agnostic about religion, or you're agnostic about God's existence, or both?
I think there's something.
Okay. Good start.
I think I recently read something about Kabbalistic theory, which I found very interesting.
Okay.
Where they try to describe God not as something he or it is, but saying that it's something you can only describe what it's not. You can't say God exists here. Sure. You can only say God is endless.
Okay.
There's no end to it. I find that a very I think it really lines up with how I think about God. It's not a singular thing or a singular person. It's an all-encompassing force, and it's even more than that.
Yeah, I find that problematic in a bit because there have been. You cannot just define God based on negations. You can't. If you just negate attributes from God, it's not enough to define God. For instance, I can say God is not bad. That doesn't necessarily mean He's good.
Yeah.
So if I don't affirm goodness for God, that's an essential attribute for God's existence. I can say God is not ignorant. That doesn't necessitate that God is all-knowing because He's not ignorant. So I find it very problematic. But negation is necessary, but in the same time, affirmation is also necessary.
I just said I'm not really into debating, but I do want to pick your brain about something. By saying God is good, what do we mean by good? Don't we try to capture something about like something so much higher than us by applying a human concept to it?
Yeah, sure. So in an Islamic point of view, we only attribute to God what He attributes to Himself.
Okay.
We only attribute to God what He attributes to Himself. Because Allah is the truth, for instance, one of His names, and He's the all-knowing, the most wise, all of these things. Whatever God commands you to do, by default, that is good because God Himself is good, right? And what He forbids you from doing is by default a bad thing. God defines what good is and what bad is due to His perfect nature and existence. He possesses that we don't possess.
And that's a nice way to grab that contradiction by saying, yeah, I like that.
Okay, so you say you believe in something then, that there is something that exists, some higher power, something. Do you believe that thing created the world?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you would say you would believe in a God, but you don't have a definition for what a God is, basically. You don't. Okay, so what about prophets and messengers? Like you've heard about Islam, Prophet Muhammad, you heard about Jesus, you heard about Moses, Noah, Abraham, Adam. What is your view on these Abrahamic prophets or prophets that come and say that we're coming from God to tell you your purpose in life, what you're doing here, and we're sent by the Creator, and we're bringing a form of guidance? I mean, when you create something, because that Creator created us, when we create something, even as human beings, we have, for example, a manual, right? A manual with the phone. This is how you operate the phone. You need instructions to know how to operate that thing in the best way. You can look at the guidance coming from God as a form of a manual for human beings, right? which way you view things in life, what is the good things to do, what is the bad things to avoid. Not only that, but it answers the existential questions: how we're here, who brought us here, who created all of this, and where are we going in the afterlife. So that is the point of having religious scripture and guidance: why you're created, where you're going to go in the afterlife, and what is the moral aspects of your life. So how do you view these people then? Do you believe that there's prophets that came, that brought revelation? What's your position on these things?
It's a very complicated question. How do I view prophets?
So would it make more sense, let me ask it this way, would it make more sense if there's a creator that created everything, created this world, for that creator to give us guidance or not to give us guidance? Which one makes more rational sense?
Oh, like I believe in the concept of a prophet.
Okay, sure.
If that's what you're aiming at.
Yes. But who are these prophets then that you believe in?
I think there are many of them.
Like the ones I mentioned?
From the Abrahamic.
Sure.
Where you said.
So what is a prophet to you?
I also view something like the Buddha as something like a prophet.
Okay, sure. I mean,
I know that falls outside of Islam.
No, in Islam, we believe there was, let's say, tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of prophets, right? Throughout human history. We don't have all their names. Could Buddha have been a prophet? It's a possibility, even under an Islamic worldview. But the teachings remaining now, which, by the way, are not traced back to Buddha, you cannot trace them historically to him back. So what people are following today, we would say that's not true, right? It has elements of truth, right?
Yeah.
So they can say certain things which are true. I'm not saying everything there is wrong, but there are many things that are not true. So connecting that to the person that existed that was called Buddha is questionable, because you cannot connect them to him historically. Now, that individual historical figure, when he left Buddha in life, when he was walking around, could he have been a messenger of God? It's possible. Could he have been a prophet of God? Under an Islamic worldview, he could have been. So we make a distinction between what people attribute to him today and between what he actually preached when he was alive, and whether he was or he wasn't, that's a possibility, right? So, but you say you believe and accept the existence of the prophet I mentioned. So my question is, are these prophets, this is how we define a prophet, maybe you agree or disagree, people who get direct revelation from God, and then they teach the people about God and the existence and morality and these things. Is that the same position that you're holding?
Sorry.
Or what is a prophet to you, basically? How do you define a prophet?
How do I define prophet? Okay. I'm still working on this, but I would say, now from the top of my head, I would say that a prophet is somebody who has revelations.
Sure.
And it has to be a revelation that's not in wherever they are. It's not what somebody wants to hear.
Okay.
A prophet is not somebody who says, hey, we're all doing the right thing.
Sure.
Just keep doing everything.
Sure, so he's coming to correct something in society, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's to you say.
Yeah. Reform issues in society,
to
basically.
reform something.
Yes, okay,
I think that's my definition of how I see prophets.
I think, that's the definition that people will agree with. If you say a prophet is someone who receives a revelation from God and then he guides people, reforms the evil, bad deeds that they're doing and tells them this is wrong, do this. Because if people are already doing good, there is no point of sending a messenger to them then, obviously, right? Because they're doing good. So, didn't you believe that Jesus was, Moses was, Prophet Muhammad was? You believe these people were all messengers of God?
I think they could be.
Could be. So how would you define? Now let's move on to the next part of the question then, right? So now we established there is a creator. Creator sends prophets. This is the definition of prophets. Now how do we identify whether someone is a true prophet or not? Because they all claim to be prophets, right? All of the people we mentioned. Now how do we identify whether Prophet Muhammad, for instance, was a prophet of God or not?
Yeah, I would take the very annoying concept of we just can't.
We can't, but that's a problem. Why? You have to logically tell me why we can't.
That's the whole point of, in my view, religion. That it's something that cannot be completely scientifically founded. You can always say, well, that's just the person saying something. I think the point of religion is that somebody has to put into work to read or hear something and to believe in it.
Okay,
as soon as that goes away, as soon as you can evidently show this is true, like like you say, this is white.
Sure.
You don't need the prophet to say this is white.
Sure.
So it's just true. So
Sure.
it's not a religion to point at this and say it's white. I think
Sure.
the whole cut-off point of religion is where belief is necessary.
Okay, so let me say why I kind of disagree with you. But first, I say we're not talking about the same thing in a way. I was talking about a prophet. How do I identify a prophet as being from God? And then you talked about the concept of an idea which is called religion. I think these are two separate things. They're not the same thing. But first, use the word science. So let me just first tackle that first, and then speak about the idea of religion or prophet. What is the definition of science? What is the scientific method?
Things that we can know within an axiomatic system to be true.
Yeah, what's that system? What's the scientific method?
What I think is one of the most beautiful works ever written is Euler's elements, where somebody exactly describes, you take a point, you take another point, you connect them, it's a line. If you set a circle on that point, and from there you start to build up. You say, we take these evident things to be true. Okay, we need to accept those. And we accept, most people will accept those. And from there we start to build a system of understanding. That's science.
The scientific method has a definition, right? The scientific method is to study the physical natural world. So we study the physical natural world, whatever we can observe, whatever we can put under a microscope, that's what we can study using the scientific method. So we study the physical natural world through experimentation, repeatability, repeat the experiment, and falsification. Whether we falsify the conclusion or remain with the conclusion, that's the best conclusion we have at the moment. That is what scientific method is, and the conclusions are what science is, right? So that scientific method is limited. Is limited to what? Is limited to the natural physical world. Is limited to the set of data that you have, and it is not absolute, meaning it doesn't give you absolute facts. It gives you conclusions, and these conclusions change. So you have books written, for example, like Paradigm Shift by Thomas Kuhn, where he talks about massive changes in science. Like, obviously, we know the theory of gravity, for example, Newtonian physics and Einsteinian physics, and massive changes in science that happens. Static state theory, Big Bang theory. Why do they happen? Because science does not give you absolute truth. It gives you the best conclusion based on the data that you have. Also, science is based on other things. It cannot function without them. So, for instance, science has the premise of logic and mathematics. Without them, science cannot function. So, science is weaker than reasoning and logic and mathematics because these are deductive methods, while science is an inductive method. So, it's a weaker method. So, I don't need to be scientific in a religion to be stronger than even the method of science, because science doesn't give.
I completely agree with you, to be clear.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is religion and science are two separate topics in this case. That's what I'm trying to highlight. One is inductive that leads to temporary conclusions, and it's a useful method. We use it. It's an instrumental method. You can use it as an instrument. And we say religion is reasoning and facts and logic that can give you absolute facts. Can give you absolute. We're talking about true religion, of course, not false religions, right? So now, coming back to the idea of prophets now, because like I said, science, by the way, flourished under Islamic Empire because the scientific method they're using today, the modern scientific method, is developed by a Muslim called Al-Hasan ibn Haytham Andalusia. And his book Optics is how we have cameras, right? Algorithms is a translation of a Muslim name, Al-Khwarizmi, right? Algebra, same thing, same story, right? So Muslims don't have a problem with science, but we use it as an instrument, and we understand the realm of God and metaphysics is a different realm of the realm of science, which is the physical world, observing it and putting it on the microscope. Now, coming back to the question, separating religion from prophet. I'm talking about a prophet, someone who comes, makes a claim, I am sent by God. God gives me a revelation. That's what a prophet is, right? That's a claim. How do we identify whether this person is making a true claim or a false claim? Because if he is, and you cannot say we can't, that was kind of the answer in a way, right? Yeah. So I said that's not a rational answer, because we can. Well, rationally, we can come to the conclusion.
On your method of it, I'm a theorist. I've studied theoretical chemistry.
Sure.
So I'm pure in the math world. So for me to say something is true, it has to fit in a system that can trace back to absolute axioms.
Okay.
Even saying words vilifies like absolute truth, because in that way there's wiggle room with the law. With the law you try to capture something very exact, but there's always loopholes in the law.
Can I answer? I'll answer that point for you.
So to finish my point, for what me true, I think we're talking about a different kind of truth. for me, truth is like a higher standard.
Sure.
For something to be absolutely not false, it's. I don't even think it's possible to capture that.
That's a problem with philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, no, but do you believe in existence for absolute truth, though? There is absolute truth.
No.
But that's a problem
Well,
with
okay, within an axiomatic system,
Yes.
there can be absolute.
within any system. Do you believe in our reality and existence? There is absolute truth.
No.
So nothing is absolutely true.
No.
So it's not absolutely true that you exist right now.
No.
So you don't exist then.
Well, there's a chance of it.
No. This is the problem with
Yeah.
going into too much philosophy, right? When someone, and I'll say this with respect, I don't mean insulting. Someone can get confused, right? And I meet hyper skeptics like this a lot. They get too much into philosophy, where they start doubting the basis of existence. So there are different types of knowledge, right? There's deductive knowledge, inductive knowledge, but there's intuitive knowledge. One of the intuitive knowledge, which is the basis of everything, is our intuitive knowledge of knowing our existence. We intuitively know that we exist in this life. That's the absolute strongest form of knowledge, because everything is built on that. Once we exist, we experience life, and then we experience knowledge, we experience induction, deduction, and everything else. There is absolute fact. Like there is absolute fact that there is a building behind you, that there is a light coming down, that there is a moon in the sky. These are all absolutely true things. You don't live your life based on maybe I exist, maybe I don't exist. You live your life based on that you exist, thinking that this is true.
No.
What no? Which part?
For me, truth is absolute truth, as you say, is something that's way higher. So
Define absolute truth. Define absolute truth.
Absolute truth is something you can trace back to simple axioms. Like I say, math
What does
is
that mean?
Something like math. Something like maths, where you can trace it back to simple axioms.
How do you trace back 1 + 1 to a simple axiom?
Well,
Equals 2.
within mathematics, everything is built up from.
It's an abstract concept. Mathematics is an abstract concept. Yeah. How do you trace it back to axioms?
Okay, so are you well versed into set theory?
No, I don't wanna branch
Yeah,
too much.
but-
I don't wanna branch too much. Look, I don't.
But
look, I'll
there's
tell you
no-
why I don't want to branch too much. Because as human beings, 99% of people are very basic human beings, right? They don't indulge into too much complicated concepts and theories, and they live their life and they function that way.
Yeah.
And so the very minority of people that do, like I said, they come to absurd conclusions sometimes. Like I give an example of denying your own existence. This whole Descartes thing of cogito, of I think therefore I am, is the same absurdity where he was like, oh, do I exist? Do I don't exist? And then he ended up with the cogito, I think therefore I am.
Yeah.
He's thinking therefore there must be something in existence, therefore he exists. But at least he said that's an absolute existence, that's an absolute thing. Even to say there is no absolute truth, that's a self-defeating argument. Because the question is that statement absolutely true?
No.
So you just self-defeated
No,
the
but you
argument.
don't need absolute truth to function.
So there is absolute truth.
Like, okay,
No,
I was 99% sure. I'm 99.999%.
No, I am a million% sure.
I won't die if I cross the street.
Sorry.
So I can still cross the street when the light is green because I know, okay, there's a 99.9% I won't get hit by a car. I can function without absolute truth.
No, but we're not. But why do you assume function? We're not talking about functionality. Why do you assume functionality is relevant to the existence or non-existence of absolute truth? I'm not talking about functionality now. Why are you like using a utility kind of approach to it? I'm not looking at it that way. Saying in reality, regardless of the fact whether you can function with it or not, in reality, is there absolute truth or not? There is. It's either you exist or you don't exist. One of these two things are absolutely true.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is absolute truth.
Well,
Whatever is true
is true.
No, exactly.
But what I know
So whatever is
the
true-
gradient between that.
No, but whatever is true between these two things is absolute truth. So there is absolute truth.
Yeah.
Your limited knowledge is irrelevant. In reality, it's absolutely true whether you exist or you don't exist.
So-
As a human being, you know for a fact, for instance, it's absolutely true if you don't go to work, you're not going to get your paid. You know that's an absolutely true fact. So it's absolutely true. There's no probability there. You're functioning based on absolute fact and working based on
But
absolute fact.
even in
You know,
their-
as a human being, absolutely fact, if you don't drink water, you're going to die. You know, if you don't consume food, you're going to die. We know many things as absolutely true, and we function based on them being 100% absolutely true. We don't function based on probabilities like our particles. Now, but the point I was making, let's come back to what I think is very important. Yeah, exactly, because I want to stick on that, because these are all theoretical kind of discussions. Now, how do we know a prophet is a messenger from God or is not a messenger from God? Now, we see there is absolute truth. There is absolute truth. Even if you don't want to take absolute truth on your worldview or whatever, you will still take the probability of 99.9 whatever probability you want to take. I claim it is absolute truth, and it has to be absolute truth. But either way, how do we know he is or he isn't? Let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. No, without belief. Without belief.
There is no relation.
Without I think your belief means blind faith, right?
Within the if my knowledge from Abrahamic religion is correct, is that God gave us free will in order so we can choose to believe or not, right?
Okay, so you may have a background from Christianity, you may have a background from other faith, where they rely on just believe blind faith or anything. Islam doesn't function that way. We believe we can have evidences, like we can use reasoning, deductive logic and reasoning, and we can see evidences that we say the only possibility that this person was a messenger of God. I'll give you an example and ask you a question, you tell me. I'll give you the idea, the concept, and you tell me whether that you agree that this will mean that this is a messenger of God or not. 1,400 years ago, take yourself back in a time machine and put yourself 1,500 years ago in the past. What equipment did we have? No planes, no cars, no microscopes, no telescopes, no phones, no advanced light systems, nothing. People lived in tents, and they had camels and sheep and some water, yeah? In the deserts of Arabia at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Okay. Put yourself in that time, in that locality, in the existence of the Prophet Muhammad. Living with these people 40 years, people know him, revelation from God comes to him. Now, in that revelation, in his teaching and in that revelation, you have the following. You have prophecies of the future, of things that happens in his time. He says this will happen, that will happen, that will happen. Hundreds of years after him, and even today, 1,400 years later, these things are happening. So he makes tens of prophecies of the future. With what criteria? None of them are false. Clear. Some of them are even time-bound, giving you time specific what will happen. None of them are false, none of them are falsified, and he's known to be a true teller. So this is the criteria. He makes these prophecies. Number one. Number two, he brings a book, Revelation, which has information about the natural world. It has information about cosmology, about chemistry, about biology, about hydrology, about everything.
Yeah.
And everything it says, not only is it true, it surpasses everything in its time. We today, with our knowledge, we start learning, okay, the Quran is right about this. We are catching up with the knowledge in a book that came 1,400 years before us, with all our advancements and equipment. He also tells you things about the past which nobody has access to. They didn't exist in previous Abrahamic texts. He couldn't have access there because, for instance, the hieroglyphics was not a language that was spoken. We only discovered the Rosetta Stone like 200 years ago. We can read the hieroglyphics. So he tells you information about ancient Egyptians that nobody knew, that today we're discovering is true. Tells you information about ancient Mesopotamia and Abraham and his people that nobody knew. That today we're discovering temples buried under the sand, and we realize that what the Quran says is in line with the teachings about what these people used to do. So he's doing all of that, and then he brings a perfect system of how to live your life that surpasses everyone and everything, right? And he brings the text, the Quran, in the Arabic language that redefines the language, because in the Arabic language you have prose and poetry. The Quran has its own category. It's neither prose or poetry, and it makes a challenge for anyone to imitate it, produce a text like it. And that challenge has been here for 1,400 years. That's why all the Arabs, nobody has been able to imitate it, and they all submit to the Quran being the highest literature. Now we take all of these things into account. Is it possible for a human being to do all of that? And at the same time, he says this is from God, it's not from me. Only God knows the future, I don't know. God knows how the world is, I don't know. God knows the history, I'm not the person who does. Is it possible for a human being who lived in that time and only had access to what you can have access to in that time to bring about these things that I said, if he wasn't truly a messenger of God? And if he can, you're welcome to tell me how. I'd love to hear it.
So, if somebody wrote that book and it was so clear that everybody who read it would instantly believe that he was a prophet, why would some people still dispute
Sure.
that he is a prophet?
Sure. First,
If it's absolute truth.
no worries. First, let's deal with my argument and then I'll respond to your argument. Or I'll be generous and I'll even respond to what you said. But it doesn't change the fact that what I said, he has to be a prophet of God if these things are true, right? Because the argument of other people, how do you receive it, is irrelevant to the fact whether it's true or not. Why do people receive it in one way? Why do people receive it? There's many reasons. We exist in this life, according to the Islamic tradition, to be tested. This life is a test. And we as humans have desires. We're not just rational beings that are like robots, like 1 + 1 = 2. No, we have desires, we have emotions, we have other things. So for instance, some people are racist. You know, I'm not going to follow this religion of this Bedouin Arab guy or whatever. The Israelis at the time of the Prophet ﷺ rejected him because he was not from the children of Israel. That was the reasoning, right? We only follow prophets from the children of Israel, a racist reason. You had people who say, you know what, I want to go to the club on a Friday night. Today is a Friday night, I want to go to the club. I want to go to the bar. I want to be able to have intercourse with a woman whenever I want. I want to drink alcohol if I want to drink. I want to gamble if I want to gamble. I'm not going to let this religion restrict me, even if it's true, I don't care. I had one guy, I swear to God, it was here. I spoke to this guy and I gave him evidence for Islam. He agreed the Prophet Muhammad is a prophet. But he said, I can't accept Islam. Do you know what he said? He said, my family is Mexican, we eat pork, and I can't be Muslim because we eat pork. Something as ridiculous as that. Human beings can have multiple reasons for why they don't accept something. You have to even see, are they going to go to that step where they even investigate truly? And if they hear already about Islam, there are commandments. So we said first the aspect that they restrict your desires, but also there's commandments of things you need to do. You need to pray 5 times a day, you need to fast. So someone doesn't want to do certain things. Someone doesn't want to restrict his desires. Someone wants to live his life in an open, free way, and whichever way he wants to do it. There's many reasons why people may not accept the truth. Even at the time of the prophets themselves. Moses, when he split the sea for his people, they crossed the sea and they started worshiping the calf. Literally after he crossed this, like, what else do you need? Like, you know this is a messenger from God. It's not just about proof. There's many other elements that can prevent humans from following the truth, and that's why they're being tested. But it doesn't change the fact. The truth is clear, as clear as the sun, and it cannot be refuted, like in a rational discussion, like I'm demonstrating right now. So coming back to my question, which you haven't answered. So, can he have done these things 1,400 years ago in the way that I described them if he wasn't truly a messenger from God?
Yeah, in a way I don't know.
If you say he can, you have to give me an alternative explanation. That's how logic works. If I say this is not the case, I have to give because of X.
But like,
if you're not giving a reason, then you're just avoiding truth.
The fact that you believe in absolute truth, and I don't.
No,
that's
with absolute truth or without absolute truth, you're just avoiding the truth now. With all due respect, because with absolute truth or without absolute truth, you still have to give me a rational explanation. How is he possibly able to do this if he isn't a messenger of God? There has to be a logical, rational explanation for you to provide if you reject the conclusion that he himself claimed, which was that he was a messenger of God. This is what he said. If you want to say, no, this is false, you have to give us an alternative.
So obviously I first have to read it.
Yeah, but assuming everything I said is true, which is.
Okay, so everything he wrote is true, I can accept that. But what then proves that he was a prophet, he was somebody to change the course, right?
To teach people what God requires of them, why they exist in life and happen after life.
In the meantime, between Muhammad and now, we haven't missed the prophet.
Because that prophet is going to tell you from God what you're going to miss, what you haven't missed, what will happen in the future. He's going to tell you all of that because he's sent by God.
Yeah.
So Prophet Muhammad already told us that he was the last and final messenger sent by God, and that's why that message and this evidence has been preserved. Allah, you know, the Quran, unlike any other religious scripture, is memorized by millions of people, word for word, letter for letter. We have this tradition. Allah has made that tradition and made the Quran easy for memorization, so the message can remain. There's no need to send another message. Because if you send another messenger, he's going to say the same thing. He's going to say, worship God, be good to him. The same things that are here are going to be repeated, and there is no need for that. So, Prophet Muhammad was the last and final messenger. But before him, there was many messengers, like I told you. And Prophet Muhammad told us there was many messengers.
So, in the case something horrible were to happen and we forgot the Quran?
Impossible.
Impossible.
Yes. I told you, it's in the hearts of millions of people.
Yeah.
Even if you burn every literal copy of the Quran, I'll recite it to you, back to you. No problem. I'll write it down.
But in the you would say that God would absolutely preserve.
Allah told us in the Quran, we've sent down. Yeah, Allah said, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." We've sent down the revelation, the Quran, and we're going to preserve it. Allah took it as a mission upon Himself because it should be the guidance. So long as there is people who are in the test, whether they believe or not, the Quran will be there. So that for them, they can come across the truth. Once that is no longer there, then the day of judgment will be there, the end of times, basically.
You weave a good argument. I don't think I have any more questions.
That's it. Just consider it. I'll give you my channel, by the way. You can watch it.
Was already given it by you.
Oh, okay. So there's a video there. It's called Compelling Evidences for the Truthfulness of Islam. I don't go into detail. It's like an hour, 20 minutes or whatever, because I didn't have much time. But I show some of the evidences I was telling you about. Examples of the evidences, right? Of the prophecies, for instance, of the things about the natural. So it's an absolute fact that these things are the case. And if they are, then this is the message that we're giving you. To submit to God, to become a Muslim by submitting to the Creator, because you will die one day. And if this is true, then what it says it will happen in the afterlife will happen, right? It's a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, have a nice day. Have a nice evening.
On the day of reckoning,
of course.
I guess.
Well, I hope that you're a Muslim by that time. Okay. All right. Pleasure talking to you. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.
يا قلوبا فيها الوفاء بشركم اليوم السرور